Happy Monday to everybody, and welcome to another edition of the DFO DFS show. Happy fantasy playoffs to any of our season-long listeners, and welcome to the DFO DFS show. If you've bowed out of your season-long playoffs or regular season, and now you're turning to DFS for your fantasy hockey fix, thank you so much for tuning into the DFO DFS show. Lots of viewers here already, so thank you guys again for tuning in. And if you are new to the show, just know that everything you see in the Google Sheets can be available to you for as little as $9.99 for a week. So I know the season is starting to wind down, so maybe you just want to sign up, see what we got to offer for a week or so, check it out, and then maybe prepare to make that commitment for next season. You can do that. That's an option for $9.99 a week. So thank you guys again, and if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments section, and I will get to them as I go along. If you are a regular viewer, you notice that I've added a fancy little ticker up there in the top right corner, just in case anybody shows up late. Now you kind of know which game I'm on, which game we're talking about. Included there is the implied Vegas totals for each team, which is obviously an important thing to keep an eye on when you're building, your lineups. Obviously want the team that's expected to score the most goals this evening. So without any further delay, let's get into tonight's starting goaltenders. We've got the Florida Panthers and the Columbus Blue Jackets. In the first game, it will be Sergei Bobrovsky versus Elvis Merzlikins. The Tampa Bay Lightning will host the Carolina Hurricanes. We are expecting to see Andrei Vasilevsky for the Lightning. Peter Mrazek confirmed for the Carolina Hurricanes. The Dallas Stars host the Detroit Red Wings, where it will be Anton Khudobin. Unclear who starts for the Detroit Red Wings. So you'll have to wait until warmups for that. That is at 7 p.m. Eastern. Their warmups will start. Nashville hosts the Chicago Blackhawks. UC Saros starts for the Predators. The Blackhawks refused to announce a starting goaltender, so actually they really refused to announce any lineup information whatsoever, so it's unclear who starts for them. Malcolm Subban is coming off of a shutout, so we are projecting him to start, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's Kevin Lankin. And again, that game doesn't start till 8, so 7:30 p.m. Eastern for warmups is where I'll get that information. At 9 o'clock, it'll be Darcy Kemper making a second start in a row. He'll be going head-to-head with Cam Talbot as the Coyotes host the Wild. The Edmonton Oilers versus the Montreal Canadiens will be Mike Smith versus Carey Price. The Flames against the Senators. Jacob Markstrom starts for the Flames. Unclear who starts for the Senators. And then in the nightcap, the Vegas Golden Knights will host the San Jose Sharks. Marc-Andre Fleury started yesterday for the Vegas Golden Knights, so it's almost certain it'll almost certainly be Robin Lehner this evening for them, but again, unconfirmed. And Martin Jones will start for the San Jose Sharks. Peter B says he digs the ticker. Thank you for the kind words. I dig the ticker a little bit as well. I think it's just an easy way. Obviously, people can't always show up right at 6:50 or 5:15. I mean, half the time I can't even show up right at 5:15. So a little bit easier to kind of track where we are, track our progress. So let's start with the first game. As always, we've got the Florida Panthers versus the Columbus Blue Jackets. Florida 1 grades out slightly above average in tonight's game. The rest of this game looks pretty blah. I wasn't really able to do a show at the end of last week, so we kind of missed what the most recent Florida line combinations look like. So it is Mason Marchment, Alexander Barkov, Nikita Gusev on the top line. The second line, though, however, is new. Sam Bennett centering Jonathan Huberdeau and Anthony Duclair. Third line bumps Hornquist and Wenberg down. So this whole lineup is kind of shifted. Especially with Carter Verhaeghe out. Gusev's getting a nice look up top. Duclair still in the top 6. That bumps Hornquist down, Sam Bennett. And that Huberdeau-Bennett-Duclair line looked pretty good in their first game. Obviously, we have very little data after just one game, but they did look good for whatever it is. Please make it stick from now on. I will try. Yeah, it's not too hard to put together, so I will definitely plan on keeping that going. So this is the new Panthers forward lines. On D, a little bit different today, too. Mackenzie Weegar is out. Gustav Forsling and Anton Strahlman on the top pair. Keith Yandel Gudis on the second pair. Nunavara and Brandon Montour on the third pair. It doesn't change the power plays really at all. Gusev's still up on the top power play with Yandel. Montour in his debut saw some PP2 time with Nunavara. So a lot of new players, a lot of new looks for the Panthers, so just kind of remember those as we go along here. But as I mentioned, Florida 1 looks okay. But if you were listening to the tail end of last week's show, that this line really, the Barkov line really doesn't have the same numbers we're used to seeing out of them without Carter Verhaeghe. He seems to be a very integral part of their success this season. So him missing definitely hurts the underlying numbers of the Panthers. For the matchups tonight, no crazy hard matching going on in this game. Basically, Florida 1 is just going to avoid the Panthers or the Blue Jackets, second line, which is I guess I should pull up their line combos too because they're a mess. Max Domi is a healthy scratch tonight, so that trade just looks horrendous. So they will basically just be avoiding this Texier line A line and then going up against the other three lines for the Blue Jackets. How that looks, I mean, the Blue Jackets second line is kind of the one that you would want to target. But realistically, this whole team is not very good. It is a little bit unfortunate, however, that Florida 1 is likely to avoid them most of the night because, I mean, like a 38.3 Corsi 4, 37.7 expected goals for percentage, just disastrous rates from Columbus 2. So it would be nice, obviously, if Florida 2 is going to see a little bit more of them, but it's unclear. So who will see a little bit of them? Obviously, Florida 2 and Florida 3 will definitely get their fair share, of the Blue Jackets' second line. The problem is we don't have great information about what that line, like I said, looks like with Sam Bennett. So if you want to take a shot in the dark on them, I think it's an okay move. The matchup is pretty good. They are going to play against basically everybody except for the Blue Jackets fourth line, which again, that's probably a matchup that you'd want to see. But if you want to take a shot in the dark and hope that maybe that Bennett trade works. I mean, his underlying numbers have never been all that fantastic, but they did look okay in game one, and I think it could be worth a shot in the dark. Bennett just 2,600, Duclair 4,000, Huberdeau 6,500. So I'm not in love with it, but I think the matchup's okay. You could take a shot. I am a little bit concerned about Florida 1. I mean, like I said, the Blue Jackets aren't a very good team, but defensively they're not terrible. They're just very boring. They kind of suck the life out of the game. They provide nothing offensively. They provide very little. And then on defense, they just don't give up a ton, but they're not great defensively either. So I think Florida 1 is okay tonight. They're probably middle of the pack in terms of, a priority for me to play them tonight. With that being said, though, I do like Gusev a lot, 3,100. As a punt option, as a one-off, I think Gusev's really solid. 3,100 playing with Barkov at 5v5 and on the top power play unit. I think he's going to be very popular, but I think he's a really strong play. I'm not in love with Marchman at 3,200, but if you maybe wanted to pair Gusev and Barkov together, that's fine. Barkov in a so-so matchup, at 8,200 is a little steep, especially given some of the other big names on tonight's slate. So that's kind of it for this game. I don't really like the Blue Jackets ever, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. From a power play standpoint, Florida just slightly below average on the power play, and we see that a lot with the Blue Jackets games. The Blue Jackets take no penalties whatsoever. They also don't draw any either, so they're one of the most disciplined teams in the league, and they also have one of the best penalty kills. So just not doesn't look like a great matchup for Florida in this game, but I'm still okay, with a little bit of Florida 1. All right, second game, we've got the Lightning and the Carolina Hurricanes. Obviously a huge game in that division. Two very good teams, two teams that like to play with a ton of pace, very in-your-face game. Carolina 1, 3, and 2 actually grade out as the three best lines in this game. Tampa Bay 2 and 1 still above average, but lagging behind. Carolina 1 and 3 look like they look to have the biggest 5v5 advantage. We'll get to them in a second, but I was absolutely blown away when I saw Carolina 3's underlying numbers. They're absolutely outstanding. Sometimes you do have to be careful with that. We see it a lot with Montreal 1, they have the ability to dominate and post, terrific underlying numbers, but maybe lack some of that game-breaking talent to kind of finish off those plays. And I think that that's something that you can definitely say about this Carolina third line. I mean, obviously pretty talented players in Jordan Staal and Ido Niederreiter, but they're not like the elite where, if somebody like Connor McDavid is posting those kind of underlying numbers, you'd expect him to finish off more chances. But still, the underlying numbers are impressive. They're definitely generating chances, and we will talk about them. So yeah, in this game, it's going to be Tampa Bay 1 versus the Aho line for the majority of the evening. Tampa Bay 2, which right now I have listed as the Yanni Gourde line. They've just been playing a lot more minutes than the Cirelli line as of late, so I've moved them up into the second spot. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go here. And then the Cirelli line, expected to see quite a bit of that Vincent Trocheck line with the fourth lines going head-to-head. So it makes it a little bit easier to break this game down. Tampa Bay 1 is okay. They're just not the same without Steven Stamkos. They've really kind of, Braden Point's obviously been playing extremely well as of late. But overall, on a night-to-night basis, that they've really lacked that consistency that we've come to expect out of Tampa Bay's top line over recent years. Obviously, no Nikita Kucherov, no Steven Stamkos is definitely going to hurt. Alex Barré-Boulet's looked pretty solid up there, from the eye test standpoint, but really not generating anything in terms of, DFS value. No shots on goal, really, no block shots, no points to this point either. So, as I mentioned, they're going to go head-to-head with the Aho line. That's a pretty tough matchup. The Aho line, very, very good at 5v5. I don't love Tampa Bay 1 tonight. But on the flip side, I'm not in love with Carolina 1 either. I mean, it's Carolina 1 I like just because obviously their offensive numbers are terrific. But as mediocre offensively as that Braden Point line has been, they've been very, very steady defensively. So this could be a little bit of a lower event matchup with both lines kind of sawing each other off. The second line, as I mentioned, is the Gord line. They're going to be going head-to-head with that Jordan Staal line. Jordan Staal's line, basically right around average as much of the Hurricanes are defensively. They're not bad. They don't give up a whole lot. And most of that is just because they have the puck the entire time. As you can see here, all four lines well above 53% Corsi for. So they have the puck on their sticks a ton. So, it's obviously you're going to be pretty good defensively when you've always got the puck in the offensive zone, right? So this Carolina 3 line to me looks scary. They're a little bit similar to like what Tampa Bay now 2 is, the Yanni Gourde line, right? They are very good, 55% Corsi for, 61% expected goals for. So these two lines are almost mirror images of each other, kind of going head to head. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, both very tight checking lines, good defensive lines. So as good as Carolina 3 looks on paper, going up against the Yanni Gourde, Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow line is never an ideal situation. So another matchup, it's very difficult to predict an outcome. Very, very similar lines going head to head, and they could definitely saw each other off. Obviously, there's going to be chances both ways, but there's no clear winner, no clear advantages in my point. And then the Cirelli line is going to go head to head with the Vincent Trocheck line. And again, it's a little bit similar. The Cirelli line doesn't do much offensively. They're pretty boring, but they still, manage the puck pretty well. They don't give up a whole lot offensively, defensively either. So a tough matchup for the Trocheck line, which again, pretty good offensively, solid defensively because they always have the puck, but just no real clear advantages here. I think what sticks out in this is that the Hurricanes look a little bit better offensively and the Lightning look a little bit better defensively. So it should be a very even matchup. And when you look at this, I mean, I guess, especially from a Carolina standpoint, right? I mean, if you're trying to mirror, what the defending champs have done and what the defending champs have built, if you look on paper here, the Hurricanes seem to have done a very good job building a team that looks almost identical to what the Tampa Bay Lightning look like. And then obviously, they look a little bit better offensively when Stamkos and Kucherov are in the lineup, but both very good 5v5 teams, and it's very difficult to really predict a match, an outcome in this game. And Vegas tends to agree. 2.9 implied goals for the Lightning, 2.7 for the Hurricanes. So very tight game, but one of the lower scoring games on the slate. And I tend to agree with that sentiment as well. So third game, we've got the Dallas Stars and the Detroit Red Wings. So as I mentioned, it will be Anton Khudobin for the Stars. What sticks out to me right away when I opened up this slate is that Anton Khudobin against the Red Wings is just $7,200, and I don't know why. It's very confusing. Anton Khudobin has been playing pretty well. The Red Wings, obviously, they were on a bit of a winning streak of their own, and then they got shut out by Malcolm Subban. So, I think the Red Wings are definitely playing a little bit better as of late, but they still were, they still got shut out by Malcolm Subban. And at $7,200, Anton Khudobin makes too much sense tonight. The one issue with him, obviously, is he's going to be incredibly popular, but it's pretty obvious why he's going to be popular. So in terms of the matchups in this game, I forgot to mention the power play for the last game. The Hurricanes have a small power play advantage. Not the biggest. It's one of the biggest on the slate, but not the biggest. They're about the third best power play advantage. They've got a really solid power play, among the best on the slate. The Lightning do have quite a good penalty kill, however, but the Lightning are one of the most undisciplined, actually tied for the most undisciplined team on the entire slate. So the Hurricanes could have plenty of chances tonight, which helps boost up their power play advantage a little bit. But all right, the Red Wings and the Stars. So if you've been watching the show a lot, you know that I am a huge Roope Hintz fan. Cheers, because he is a game time decision tonight, as he always is. But I absolutely love Dallas 1. Whenever they play, they look terrific again tonight. Dallas 2 also posting pretty solid numbers across the board right now. They're a decent pivot play off of Dallas 1, who will be relatively popular, I would imagine. But okay, so in terms of the matchups, we're going to see Dallas 1 go up against the second and fourth lines for the majority of the time. Same thing goes for Dallas 2. What Dallas does usually is they allow their checking line, their third and their fourth line, to go up against the other team's top line, top six most of the time, and then it allows their top six to kind of feast a little bit on the opponent's weaker lines. So that should be pretty good for the Red Wings tonight. The Red Wings second line is not very good defensively. That is the Michael Rasmussen line with whoever they decide to put up there. Last game, it was Valtteri Filppula and Richard Panik, which isn't a line that should scare anybody off. So they give up, plenty of chances, 26 and almost 11 high danger, 36.8 Corsi for. Definitely a line that Dallas won. Who posts just outstanding underlying numbers, can absolutely crush tonight. The Red Wings fourth line, the Luke Glendening line, obviously they had their struggles earlier in the season, but the last month or so they've been really, really solid defensively. Obviously, Darren Helm, Adam Ernie, Luke Glendening, they don't get a whole lot going offensively, except for Adam Ernie just seems to score every single game. But from a chances standpoint, they don't generate anything. But it's not a great matchup there for Dallas 1. So Glendening should do a decent job against the Hintz line, but they should absolutely crush Detroit too. Very similar matchup for Dallas too. So the same goes for them. They don't have quite the same offensive numbers. They don't play quite as much as Dallas 1 either. But their numbers are very similar. 2.77 expected goals for, 31, almost 32 scoring chances for, 12 high danger. So Ben Gurianov look really, really solid. Another good matchup for them tonight. They should also crush Detroit too. Dallas 3 and 4. Like I said, they're the checking lines. They don't do a whole lot offensively. Defensively, they're pretty solid. The fourth line, not so much, but the fourth line is just a revolving door. Whoever has a shitty game, they just put in a new body and go at it again the next day until they find something. So, I think it's pretty simple here. Dallas 1, Dallas 2 look really, really good. Dallas 1 will be more popular of the two, but Dallas 2, looks solid as well. In terms of the pricing, very expensive for Dallas 1. So, DraftKings is catching on. We had a couple weeks there where we were able to just plug and play them at a very minimal price and just reap the rewards. Not so much anymore. But the same can't be said for Dallas 2. Still very reasonably priced. Jamie Benn, 5,300. Dennis Gurianov, 4,000. They're solid. They don't have the same upside as Dallas 1 would, but they're still a solid play and relatively cheap. So decent value out of them too. From the Red Wings side of things, the top line is going to see quite a bit of Rupe Hintz and Radek Faksa, mostly Radek Faksa, which is not surprising. That's what they like to do. And the Faksa line is just outstanding defensively. So no real reason to play the Red Wings top line tonight, especially considering they haven't been doing a whole lot. It is intriguing. Jesus, that was loud. It is intriguing seeing Jakub Vrana up there with Dylan Larkin, but so far they haven't really gotten a whole lot going in their couple of games. Obviously, too small of a sample size to really read into anything too much, but nothing that stands out where you'd be like, they're matchup proof. They're not. And Fax's line should do a pretty good job against them. And then the rest of the Detroit lineup is just very, subpar, very below average offensively. So that's that for that game. The Stars have a slightly above average power play advantage. Their power play is slightly above average. Their Red Wings penalty kills slightly below average. So nothing that really stands out that's going to just kind of blow you away. But at 5v5, Dallas 1 and 2 should have plenty of success tonight. Peter B says Gurianov is way too inconsistent. Been burned by him too many times. Yeah, 100% he's way too inconsistent. But that is kind of reflected in his price, right? At 4,000, he does have plenty of upside at that price. His shot is absolutely lethal. The problem is he doesn't shoot enough. He is coming off of back-to-back pretty good games. But I agree. He is tough to get behind, but I'd like to see that their offensive numbers are coming around quite a bit. So, the fact that their underlying numbers look better helps me have a little bit more belief in Gurianov, but I agree. But at the same time, you are kind of getting that inconsistency built in with his pricing at just 4,000. I think he's worth a gamble there. Have you done the PP chart? Yes, I have. I've been pulling it up in between every single game, and I will continue to do so. But first, let's get to the fourth game of the night, which is the Nashville Predators and the Chicago Blackhawks. So Nashville won, grades out with the biggest advantage of this game. The Blackhawks top line looks solid as well. The Chicago second line slightly above average, and then the rest of the lines not looking so hot. So I don't know. Like I said, the Blackhawks didn't really give us any lineup information, so it's hard to really judge what the line combos are going to be. But this is what they were last game. Vinny Hinostroza was moved up with Pius Suter and Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat with Kirby Dach and Brandon Hagel. So I don't know if this is what they'll look like in this game. They did shut out the Red Wings, so I would imagine that their lineup will stay relatively similar. But again, I can't predict that. But that's what all I have to go off right now. So yeah, Nashville won. Rocco Grimaldi, Ryan Johansson, Victor Arvidsson, full stack, just 12,000. They've been pretty solid, and they're going to go up against the top six of the Blackhawks. And then the Blackhawks top line is just basically going to avoid everybody but the Nashville second line, which is unfortunate for them because that line is just terrible, horrendous defensively. But let's get into it a little more here. So as I mentioned, Nashville one's been pretty solid. 2.82 expected goals for, almost 29 scoring chances for. Really nice offensive numbers. Defensively, they're giving up their fair share. They're just playing very high event hockey. So going up against, though, the Blackhawks top six is a really good matchup. Both lines well below average defensively, not very good. Both almost giving up 29 scoring chances and 12 high danger chances for per 60. So it does look like a really nice matchup for Nashville one. However, it's very difficult to get behind them on a regular basis. Ryan Johansson just does not shoot enough. He has absolutely no floor whatsoever. He has 2 shots in his last 4 games, so it's hard to get behind that. But Victor Arvidsson looks solid at 5,700, maybe a decent cash game option. His shot volume is the complete opposite of Ryan Johansson, very consistent and something that you can kind of bank on a game-to-game basis. Rocco Grimaldi has looked solid up there. He did only play 10 minutes the other night. I would expect him to see more minutes than that tonight. But at 3,300, he looks like a decent value option. Him and Arvidsson as a mini stack might be an okay play tonight. But overall, it's just hard to get really excited about that line. But they do have a nice matchup, and it might be worth a low-owned pivot play. As I mentioned, Chicago 1 will basically see everybody except for Nashville 2. Which is unfortunate, but they should have a decent time against that Johansson line, which isn't very good defensively. But then the bottom 6 of the Predators is very good defensively. So I'm not in love with Chicago 1. Chicago 2 is probably the line that I would like to go to a little bit more if I am playing the Blackhawks tonight. 30% of their ice time is going to come, 31, I should say, against the top line, 30 against the second line of the Predators. So 61% of their ice time is going to come against that top 6 of the Predators, which, as you can see, not very good defensively. If we look over Nashville 2 is the worst defensive line on the entire slate. Nashville 1, the 5th worst defensive line on the entire slate. So it looks like a really nice matchup for them. Again, not a line that's going to get you overly excited, but I think a Kirby Dach, Alex DeBrincat mini looks solid. DeBrincat's obviously had a really, really good season. Kirby Dach is obviously disappointed a little bit in some very nice situations and very positive. He playing between DeBrincat and Kane really didn't do much, but this matchup is just outstanding tonight. So I do have some interest in Chicago 2 tonight. DeBrincat and Dach specifically. Brandon Hagel 2,700 if you want a full stat. But Dach looks really solid at 3,600. Hopefully he can find the back of the net tonight. That's just kind of been his bugaboo through his early portion of his career. But then DeBrincat at 7,400 looks really good. A great matchup for them. The issue would obviously be that UC Saros has started, and he's been lights out. From a power play perspective, Predators below average on the power play tonight. Dog, shut up. They just the Blackhawks are pretty disciplined. The Predators have a not so good power play, even though the Blackhawks penalty kill isn't very good. The Predators power play is below average. The Blackhawks slightly above average, mostly due to the fact that the Predators are undisciplined. That's pretty much it. There's no big advantage. They both just look okay tonight on the power play. But all right, let's go to the 5th game of the night, which is the Calgary Flames and the Ottawa Senators. So this is an interesting game because you don't. Whoa, my sheet's all messed up. That's all right. So yeah, Ottawa 1 has been really, really good. You just don't. The Flames just really aren't giving up a whole lot defensively. They aren't really getting a lot done offensively either. So typically you'd like to target the Ottawa Senators on the road. Like, you'd like to play the team that they're playing against because they're just a terrible road team. They're not very good defensively. Matt Murray's not a very good goalie. But the Flames just don't get a whole lot done offensively. So it is kind of a weird game because I want to have interest in Calgary, but it's just very difficult to find it. All right, so now I'm skipping all over the place here, but I'll get to every game. Don't worry. So yeah, Calgary 1 will basically go head-to-head with Ottawa 1 and Ottawa 3 for the majority of the evening. Calgary 2 will see a lot of the second and fourth line, and then the third line and fourth line will basically just avoid the fourth line. Wow, this is messy now. Never been out of order like this. Throwing me off. So Calgary 1, pretty decent offensive numbers. That's Lindholm, that's Tkachuk, that's Gaudreau, all together. Markstrom in goal tonight. Yeah, he looks solid. I will get to that. So yeah, Calgary 1, pretty decent offensive numbers, slightly above average. Not really getting anything in terms of the high danger variety, but 28 scoring chances, 4 per 60 is solid. You like to see the 53% Corsi for. They've played pretty well defensively. So they look good. And then, like I said, they're going to go basically head-to-head with the first and third line of the Senators. The first line is their worst defensive line. They just play an absolutely freewheeling game. They're terrific offensively, but they give up a lot on the other end as well. As for the third line, not so bad defensively, but they're just a total tire fire offensively. Like literally nothing offensively from Ottawa 3. So that should allow Calgary 1 to have a pretty good night. They got a nice matchup there with Ottawa 1 and Ottawa 3. So I do have some interest in Calgary 1. You get Lindholm, you get Tkachuk, you get Gaudreau. They're all on the top power play unit together as well. So that makes things a little bit interesting. Like I said, they haven't been all that great offensively, so maybe their own percentage is relatively low tonight. I don't know if that's definitely going to be the case. If you look there at the Vegas implied totals, they've got Calgary at 3.6 goals for tonight, which is second highest behind only the Vegas Golden Knights. So Vegas likes Calgary. There is reason to get a little bit excited about them tonight. I think that top line is probably as far as I would go because, as I mentioned, they're all together on the top power play unit. So it's not like the second and third lines are really going to, even if they get it done in the 5v5, Calgary 1 has the best upside at 5v5 and on the power play. And the second and third lines really aren't getting quite as much going offensively. Their matchups are going to be very similar, but they're just not quite as good. So what's the point in really targeting them at this point? So Calgary 1 or bust for me in that game, or for Calgary, I should say. For the Senators top line, I mentioned they're really, really good offensively. They are going to see a decent amount of the top line, and then quite a bit of the Flames bottom six. The Flames bottom six has been really, really good defensively since then the coaching change. The top line's even been pretty good too. So it just, Ottawa 1 grades out terrifically. Like, their underlying numbers are outstanding. The matchup isn't great. And like I said, they're just not the same team on the road for whatever it is. Even though there's no fans, they just aren't very good on the road. So I don't really have a whole lot of interest in them tonight. And as Hammerhead Nation pointed out, Markstrom in goal tonight looks pretty good. If we do take a look here at the goaltending chart really quickly, UC Saros actually grades out as the best. Sergei Bobrovsky, number 2. Mike Smith, number 3. Markstrom grades in at number 4. But all these guys are very similar. UC Saros seems to stick out as the clear option up top. And then the rest of the middle of the pack is very good. But then you have Anton Khudobin right in that mix at 7,200. So obviously he's just outstanding value. But a lot of these guys, priced right around the same, all look very similar in terms of goalie score tonight. We've got some clear favorites on in Vegas's eyes tonight. So it's just a matter of preference, but I do like Markstrom quite a bit. But obviously, you're saving 1,100 if you go down to Khudobin. I would imagine that he probably has a slightly lesser chance of winning tonight, but Vegas wouldn't even agree with that. So Markstrom looks good, but there's plenty of solid goaltending options on this slate. So Calgary 1, as I mentioned, looks pretty good there. All right, 6th game of the night, Arizona and Minnesota. Now I got to find it on this sheet because I'm all out of whack. Looks like we're back in order. Okay. Arizona 1 grades out as the only line above average in this game. The rest of the lines don't look very good. Not really all that surprising. Minnesota is just, they're a good 5v5 team, but most of their success in real hockey comes from being a good defensive team, not so much offensively. So Arizona 1 is just going to basically avoid the fourth line. They're going to see quite a bit of Minnesota 2, which is the Joel Eriksson Ek line, which is not good. Same goes for Arizona 3. They're going to see a lot of the top 6 of the Wild, but the majority of their ice time is going to come against the Eriksson Ek line, which, again, not very good. So I don't love Arizona for that reason. And then I'm just not in love with the Wild either. I mean, Arizona won really good, but as I mentioned, just the last line you want to go up against is Minnesota 2. They're the best defensive, one of the best defensive lines, if not the best in hockey. When Marcus Foligno is in the mix, they grade out with the best defensive score on the entire slate. So not really something that you want to target. So yeah, I just no interest really in this game at all, because outside of that Arizona top line, there's nothing that really gets you excited from the Arizona side of things. And then the matchup for them is pretty brutal. I mean, even when they go up against Minnesota 1, they're definitely going to have a chance to get things going. The Kaprizov, Rask, Zuccarello line is terrible defensively. So I suppose, in 28% of their ice time, they're going to have a good matchup. The third line, I guess, isn't very good defensively either. So that's not really being fair. In about 50% of their ice time, they're going to have a good matchup. The other 50%, they're going to be going up against Joel Eriksson Ek, and that's terrifying. So overall, not in love with Arizona 1. They're just not they obviously have been pretty solid so far this season, but even once they get by Minnesota 1 and 3, they still have to try and score on Cam Talbot, who's been sensational. So it's hard to get behind them tonight when they're seeing half their ice time against the best defensive line in hockey. From the Minnesota side of things, they're just not good offensively. The only thing I would say is that their power play is among the best in the league after being absolutely terrible through the first half of the season. They were chugging along at 7% for a while. They're one of the hottest power plays in the league in the last month. So if you want to maybe target them from a power play perspective, then maybe. Other than that, I don't love it. They just don't do anything at 5v5, at least offensively, right? They're solid, but they just don't get anything done offensively. The power play report still doesn't love them. But if this is taking into account their entire season, not what they've done in the last month. And the Coyotes have one of the worst penalty kills in the league. So maybe there's some chance for the Minnesota Wild to have some success on the power play tonight. And the problem is that it's so fragmented, it's hard to get overly excited about it. So maybe you just take one-off pieces from it. Maybe it's a Fiala, maybe it's a Kaprizov. Pair them with Jared Spurgeon, who's been really good lately as well. So I could get behind that more than playing Arizona tonight. I think that the power play definitely has a chance to stay hot against a not very good Arizona penalty kill. Kessel's almost always worth a one-off. Yeah, I mean, if you want him, I just don't understand. He's been playing pretty well. The shot volume's solid. He plays a ton of minutes because he plays with Johan Larsson, but I just have no idea why he's with Johan Larsson. I mean, I've said it on the show before. Johan Larsson was one of the best checking fourth-line centers in the entire NHL last year. To play him with Phil Kessel makes absolutely no sense. You could have an unbelievable shutdown line, but you just don't you don't utilize them like that. It's bizarre. I don't understand it at all. It's not what Phil Kessel's game's about. So it makes no sense. I mean, obviously, maybe he's just trying to say, hey, Kessel, you go do your thing, and Johan Larsson will make up for anything you do, any of your struggles defensively. Maybe that's their mindset. But to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but whatever. So yeah, not a whole lot of intrigue here. Fiala at 6,900. Yeah, the price is definitely up there. But the matchup, in terms of the power play, is definitely solid. So he has a chance to score. 6,900 is definitely very rich. Should keep his ownership down at the very least. Kaprizov at 7,200. It's very hard to get behind that. So that's what I mentioned. I don't love Minnesota, but I like to try to find some positives for each team. And Minnesota's would be their power play tonight. And even Spurgeon, he's up to 5,500, so he's getting up there in price as well. So their price is being reflected in how hot their power play has been recently. So I don't love them. I certainly don't like them at that price, but that should keep their ownership, next to nothing. Edmonton and Montreal. So this game is wild. I don't know what to make of this game. And if you guys have any leans in this game and you want to post them in the comment section, I would love it, because I don't know how to feel. To me, I want to play McDavid and I want to play Leon. But Montreal has been so good against the Oilers this year. They've been so good. Particularly Philip Deneau. He's just been outstanding against them. Now, the problem is that now that they're on home ice, you would imagine that McDavid and Leon should be able to avoid Philip Deneau. That would be the mindset that I would have if I was coaching the team. Be like, hey, get him away from him, and then hopefully they can go off tonight. I would like to be like, hey, yeah, let's look into it. There's surely they've dominated, when they're on home ice and they're able to avoid that matchup. The problem is the two games that they played in Edmonton, Montreal won 5-1 and Montreal won 3-1. But those came all the way back in January. So it's very, McDavid and Draisaitl, no goals in 5 games for Montreal this season. That's what I'm saying. Deneau's been unbelievable against them. But on home ice, I would like to imagine that they can get them in spots where they can get it done. So to me, I think so much has been made about how bad Edmonton struggles have been against Montreal this season and how well Montreal has done, reining them in, that their ownership might not be very high tonight. And this might be a spot on home ice where they can avoid Deneau and they can actually have a good game. So to me, if you could tell me that Edmonton's ownership was going to be, lower than normal, I'm all over them. If they're still going to be super high owned, then yeah, I think they're a pretty easy fade. But let's look at the matchups. They still grade out extremely well because they're just terrific. So based on their games back in January, it looks like they are going to see 34% of their ice time against Deneau. Now, that's all I have to go off of. I wouldn't be surprised if they played 0 minutes against Deneau, just because of how good he's been against them. So it's going to be interesting, to see how they handle it. Obviously, I'm not even going to talk about Montreal or Ottawa Edmonton 2-4. They're just terrible. But Edmonton won. I mean, come on. Obviously, they're ridiculous. 3.08 expected goals, 435 scoring chances, 4/60 is insane. Then obviously, though, you look, the Deneau line is very good defensively. They're not outstanding, but they're very good. The second and third lines are pretty good defensively, but they're much worse than the top line. So if they are able to avoid Deneau, if Dave Tippett says, hey, let's just avoid Deneau, we'll have Gaetan Haas go head to head with Deneau, and then we'll have McDavid and I gotta stop playing with that. Leon go head to head with everybody else, and just hopefully they dominate. I think I want to play Edmonton because you'd have to imagine that's their mindset. It would make no sense to be like, hey, let's put McDavid and Draisaitl out there against the guy that shut them down all year. It just makes no sense. So to me, I'm going off of what they had, last game, but I wouldn't be surprised if that number's, closer to 15% and they play against the bottom 9 more. So I do have interest in Edmonton 1 tonight. Obviously, that's not a crazy thing to say. As for, I have a hard time really putting a lot of stock into these matchup percentages because it's just not what I anticipate to happen tonight. But if we do look at them, obviously you're going to want to, basically target Edmonton 2-3 is just, they're very bad. They're just bad. They don't get a whole lot going offensively whatsoever. They're just terrible offensively. Defensively, they're okay. They basically just play, dump and chase hockey and give up, get off the ice. They're basically out there to just dump the puck in, not get scored against, and then get McDavid get McDavid a breather. That's pretty much all they do at this point. So the matchups, are outstanding, but I do think that, you have to be pretty interested in Montreal too tonight. It's just a really sharp looking line. I'm going to pull that up here with Suzuki in the middle, Tyler Toffoli on the wing, Joel Armia on the right side. I mentioned Armia a little bit last week as a strong play. He's only 2,800. I still think he's a strong play. His shot volume's always been pretty solid. It hasn't been since playing on this line for whatever reason. Maybe he's deferring to Toffoli a little bit more, but I do have a little bit of interest in that line just because they should see their fair share of the depth pieces of Edmonton, and then they should see a fair bit of McDavid's line too. And McDavid's line, for as good as they are offensively, they give up a ton defensively as well because they just play a very freewheeling game. So I have interest there in Montreal too. The rest of this lineup, I just don't know. I never really loved Montreal 1, but the fact that Anderson's up there makes it a little bit more exciting. Anderson's been playing outstanding. And then Montreal 3, no interest with Paul Byron out there. So I would lean towards Montreal 2. Montreal 1 looks okay though, but I think Edmonton 1's ownership is going to come down a bit. because of the lack of production, actually just like no production against Montreal this season. And I think on home ice, they can get right by getting away from Danault tonight. So obviously super expensive. Puljujarvi, 4,300 looks very intriguing. He continues to skate on that top line. You got to like him there at 4,300. McDavid, Draisaitl, still very expensive. So the fact they've done nothing against Montreal and that price should keep them down a little bit. And then in terms of the power play, I mentioned this last time, Montreal's power penalty kill is one of the worst in the entire NHL. Edmonton's got the best power play in the league from an underlying numbers perspective. So, if Montreal gets in any power play penalty kill trouble at all, then, Leon and Connor should go off. It's not like Montreal's disciplined. They're one of the least disciplined teams on this entire slate, so it's not far-fetched to imagine that the Oilers will get their chances tonight. So even again, like I mentioned the last time these two teams met, it was in in Montreal, however, and I did say it would be a night to fade McDavid and Leon because of Danault, and it worked. And Montreal did a decent job staying out of the box, but I do like Edmonton tonight on home ice with that power play against that terrible penalty kill. So I'm in if they're at discounted ownership. If you guys can't, pay that price for and you expect that lack of production to continue, then by all means go for the fade. And I hope that a lot of people do tonight. And hopefully I don't get burned. All right, we have the final game of the night. It is Vegas and it's San Jose. This game looks very juicy. If you like Vegas tonight, Vegas 2, Vegas 1, both grade out exceptionally well. San Jose 2 looks okay, and then Vegas 3 continues to play very well. So they look solid again. The one issue here, Riley Smith is a game time decision. I'm a little concerned about that for Vegas 2. If he doesn't play, Alex Tuch most likely moves up. Shouldn't hurt them too much, but it is a concern. Vegas 1 is just like one of the hottest lines in the entire NHL right now. They just had an insane week. I think Mark Stone was like the number one star in the week. He had multi-point games every night. He's just been outstanding. Pacioretty's been really good. So, it's an interesting game. So, San Jose, Bob Buchner's pissed off, I guess, at Timo Meier and Kevin Labanc. He said it publicly, and he's also saying it with his line combination. So, Evander Kane, Logan Couture, Noah Gregor on the top line. Labanc and Meier together on the third line with Dylan Gambrell. For parts of their last game, they were actually on the fourth line with Joel Kelman. So he's sending a message to them. San Jose 2, not nearly as good without Timo Meier. So, as much as I once loved them without Timo Meier, no thank you. The Evander Kane, Logan Couture duo, not nearly as good with who was it? Noah Gregor, as they are with Kevin Labanc. Their offensive numbers really dropped down quite a bit. They're actually below average offensively, and their defensive numbers are just a total shit show. So in terms of the matchup in this game, the Vegas, it's basically going to be top 6 against top 6, bottom 6 against bottom 6. So the Sharks' top 6 looks terrible. They're not very good defensively. The second line a little bit better than the first, but still not very good. The bottom 6 isn't very good defensively either. So the Sharks are just bad defensively. Martin Jones has gone back to his typical Martin Jones way of not playing good goaltending. Marleau passes Mr. Hockey tonight. Hattie incoming. Yeah, so sure, it is Patty Marleau night. He is minimum price. The problem is that in order for him to get a hat trick, he actually has to put 3 shots on goal. And he just doesn't shoot anymore. So that's very unlikely to happen tonight. Maybe he's just fired up and he's just shooting everything tonight. I doubt it. But if you want to play the narrative, minimum price Marleau, okay. But overall, the Vegas Golden Knights are just so good defensively. It's hard to get excited. But he has to shoot 3 times to get 3 goals. We'll see. But yeah, Vegas 1 and Vegas 2, they look ridiculously good. They should crush the Sharks' top 6. They're both very similar in terms of the offensive production. A little bit better for Vegas 2. Now, here's the thing. I think I prefer Vegas 1 tonight. They're just a little bit hotter. They've actually had, they've gotten the better of the Sharks a little bit more than Vegas 2 so far this season. And then you've got the fact that they're all together on the top power play unit. This is what they did last game with Martinez up there with the full first line and then the second line all together on the second power play unit. So to me, I like Vegas 1 a little bit more just because of the fact that they're just red hot and the fact that they've got the top power play usage. They should be the first power play unit over the boards each time. So I do like them a little bit more tonight, which is different from where I normally go. But with that being said, you're not going to be able to, if you like Edmonton like I do, or even if you like any of the other expensive lines, it's going to be very difficult to play Vegas one with them. They're very expensive, $19,300 to full stack them. If you want to leave Stevenson off, that's always an option. Pacioretty's, though, still $8,200, Stone $6,600. So while I like Vegas one more from an upside perspective, I think Vegas 2 is still a very good play. At basically exactly $5,000 cheaper. Marchessault $5,600, Carlson $4,800, Riley Smith $3,900, and then if he doesn't play and Alex Tuch moves up, you save $100, and it's basically the same thing. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Matthias Janmark moves up, to be completely honest with you, either. So there'd be something you have to look for if Riley Smith doesn't play. But the fact that Riley Smith is a question mark is another reason why I like Vegas one a little bit more. And then, as I mentioned, if you take a look at the implied totals at the top right-hand of the screen, right-hand corner of the screen, Vegas is the highest applied total on the entire slate. So they look really, really good tonight, from all aspects. On the power play report, they look okay on the power play. Their power play is very good. The Sharks penalty kill, though, is pretty good as well. So that's kind of the issue there. But the Sharks are one of the most undisciplined teams on the slate, tied for the most undisciplined, so should have plenty of opportunities. So they look really good. Let's take a look again at the goalies. UC Saros at the top, Sergei Bobrovsky number 2, Mike Smith number 3, Jacob Markstrom number 4, Cam Talbot number 5, Robin Lehner number 6, Anton Khudobin number 7, Andrei Vasilevsky number 8. Those are your 8 goalies that are above average according to goalie score this evening. In terms of the shot volume against, if you're going for that high upside play, it looks like it's Elvis Merzlikins. Vegas, obviously not a huge, not in love with them. Pretty long odds this evening, but he should see the most shot volume tonight. As for the highest favorite, a favorite that's expected to see the highest shot volume tonight, that would be Mike Smith, which again is why he grades out pretty well tonight, but not a great matchup. Montreal's pretty stout. So yeah, that's that. In terms of the defensemen this evening, again, still no tool for defense. I apologize. Probably won't be ready until next season at this point in time. I just, I don't love Arizona, but Jacob Chikrin's just been so good. I can't believe how good he's been. But Alec Martinez, you got to like what you get out of Alec Martinez. Obviously pretty pricey. But at $4,900, he's actually come down quite a bit. And if he ends up playing on that top power play unit like they did last game, Alec Martinez looks like probably the best defense option on the entire slate. Even when he doesn't get involved in the offense, he's a shot blocking machine. And he has gotten involved in the offense more than he probably ever has this year. So Alec Martinez at that discounted price of $4,900 is very, very nice this evening. I did mention liking Calgary won quite a bit tonight just because of what they offer at 5 and then all in the top power play. If you can't afford Mark Giordano at 6,200, I think Rasmus Anderson is a perfect alternative at 4,400. He's got a great shot. He uses it frequently, plays a ton as well. So 4,400 for Rasmus Anderson looks like a nice price as well. If you want to go the Nashville Predators route, Ryan Ellis still far too cheap at 4,200. He's starting to play a little bit more, starting to play a little bit better. So Ellis, get in on that price before it goes up. So those are 3 D-men that are seem to be vastly underpriced this evening that I do like. In terms of going a little bit deeper, starting to punt, Jacob Slavin is way too cheap. I don't know why he's 3,400. He plays a ton. 23 minutes a night usually. He had 7 shots in his last game. He's just 3,400. I have no idea why he would ever be priced down there. I'm okay with somebody like Eric Chernak as well. His shot volume has been pretty solid. He's been up there with Victor Hedman. Scored a goal in his most recent game, but he also will block his fair bit of shots. Ryan McDonough, same price, very similar profiles. Ton of minutes, ton of opportunities. Mr. Start of the show, how do you like Sam Bennett? So I don't... Like that second line just does nothing offensively. Their underlying numbers are terrible. But they looked pretty good with Sam Bennett there in the first game. It's a super small sample size. I think they had like a 70% Corsi 4, though. They looked really solid, and their matchup's good. So I think that Sam Bennett's a fine flyer. So I don't mind Sam Bennett. I don't love him, but I think that line's okay. Sam Bennett, at least as a one-off, looks fine. Joel Edmondson's a guy that I always just punt. He just plays a ton. gets a lot of blocks, gets his shot on net quite a bit too. So he looks fine at 3,300. As we continue to go down, Brady McNabb's always 1-2. That's just very consistent. No crazy high ceiling, but he's just consistently okay. And then, Marcus Nudavara. I do like Marcus Nudavara. He's probably one of my favorite punts. He's minimum price. He gets power play time. I would imagine he plays a little bit more tonight with Mackenzie Weegar out. Obviously, different hand, but I would imagine his ice time climbs a little bit. But even still, he's been playing about 19 minutes the last couple games. He's got assists in 3 straight. Does see some power play time. Will get a shot on net. Is playing his former team if you want to use that narrative. I do like Nudavara at minimum price. But there's plenty of cheap D tonight. Maybe not so many like under 3K, but around the 4K range, 4 or 5K range is terrific defensemen, much cheaper than they should be. Yesterday I played Rasmus Dahlin at like 3,700 or whatever it was, and somebody asked like, why did you play him? And I was like, I think it was him instead of Nick Leddy. They're both on top power play unit. The Islanders are, better team, but you got to remember that Dahlin is super talented. He's very, very good. He plays a lot. So it's like, there's some guys down there that block a ton of shots, but when you get a guy like Ryan Ellis, like at 4,200, he's just way too good to be that cheap. So it's like he's the chance of him having a huge game over a guy a couple $100 cheaper is way higher. Same thing with Rasmus Anderson. So sometimes you just got to pay up a little bit. Tonight is a night where I probably won't go too deep in the D bank because there are just too many good $4,000 defensemen. So that's going to do it for today's DFO DFS show. I will quickly just pull up the entire 5v5 score to show you guys what it looks like this evening. So there's that. Vegas 2 grades out second best. Vegas 1. So they look outstanding. Edmonton 1, very, very good as well. So and the Islanders are not scoring goals at all. Think Florida will be good. They always kill the Jackets. Yeah, they do always crush the Jackets. I broke down that game at the very start. They look okay. Like I said, though, they're just not quite as dominant without Carter Verhaeghe, at least that top line. And the Blue Jackets, for all their struggles, they're at least a half-decent defensive team. They do nothing offensively, but they're at least half-decent defensively. So it's not my favorite matchup tonight, but I think that top line looks still pretty interesting. And then obviously Vegas likes them 3.4 implied goals for, which is tied for the 3rd best on the entire slate. So they look solid. Vegas expects them to crush, and I'm not going to argue with Vegas. So that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed today's DFO DFS show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please, if you could, smash that like button on your way out. Quick question: how many different GPP lines do you play daily? It changes all the time, all depending. Usually not very many. Like I'm not like a mass entry guy. I'll usually play 3, maybe 5. Some nights I'll go one of those crazy contests and enter like 20, but very, very rarely. Sometimes I only do 1, depending on the night, depending on how I feel. It changes, but usually somewhere between 3 and 5. I do like playing some of the smaller slates as well. Like Saturday, I almost took home the afternoon slate. I finished second in the big contest, which would have been nice. But I only played 3 lineups, and it's like it was like 39 entry max. So I never play a ton. But I mean, I think if you're somebody, especially if you're just starting and you want to play a lot, that $1 contest on DraftKings is pretty solid for like just trying to learn the best way to build 20 lineups. I think I like that. I like telling people to play that contest because it's, the payouts aren't terrible. And it just, you learn a lot by just playing, it only costs you $20 a night if you have a bad night. So that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoy it. Tune back in tomorrow, same time, same place, 5:15 p.m. Eastern. See you guys tomorrow.